Hello friends, welcome you all to another video, and today we are going to go with paper number 9, unit number 1, literary terms, and today we are going to start with the second literary terms, that is the theater of the absurd. So you can see on your screen that in the middle of the 1915, after the World War II, in that the situation of Europe and United States of America, or in short, all the world was very worse. So one generation and a lot of economic and physical losses the world faced during the World War II. So there was a revival of the English theatre. In the 13th and 14th, the English drama was dominated by the Loamshire plays, that is, the commercial play, removed from everyday life problems, with characters belonging to high society. The English theatre had then become a form of middle class entertainment, producing only light comedies for a limited audience. It seemed to have nothing to offer because the main plays, being staged, were either by conventional authors or by foreign ones. Among the former, we can quote Terence Rattigan, who wrote plays of characters and narrative rather than of ideas. Among the latter, we may quote Ibsen, Brecht, Sartre, and the Italian Ugo Betti. So the new kind of trends in opposition to the old one were so-called drama of commitment and social protest, the kitchen sink drama, the theater of ideas, the theater of the absurd, and the theater of angering man. So these are the five different kind of dramas emerged in the middle of 1915, and we are going to see what is the theater of the absurd. So you can see here the theater of the absurd. You can see between 1952 to 1962, some playwrights who had met in Paris wrote a series of plays that are generally labeled as absurdist plays. And these writers were the Irishman Samuel Beckett, the Romanian Eugenio Jonesescu, the Russian Arthur Adamo, and the Spanish Fernando Arrabal. They had in common the same vision of life and of man trapped in a hostile universe, without any chance of happiness and hope for the future. Their works reflected the anxiety and the troubles of their contemporaries, who believed that man could not find any essential purpose in his actions. They did not regard themselves as a school, and they did not found a movement. On the contrary, each of them, as Martin Islin writes in The Theatre of Absurd, is an individual who regards himself as a lone outsider, cut off and isolated in his private world, with his own personal approach both to subject matter and to form, with his own roots, sources, and background. The term theatre of absurd is applied to a number of works in drama and prose fiction which have in common the view that human condition is essentially absurd, and that this condition can be adequately represented only in works of literature that are themselves absurd, both the mood and dramaturgy of absurdity were anticipated as early as 1896 in Alfred Jarry's French play Abu Roy, that is the Abu the King. The literature has its roots also in the movements of Expressionism and Surrealism, as well as in the fiction written in 1920s of Franz Kafka, The Trial, Metropolis. The current movement, however, emerged in France after the horrors of World War II. The World War began from 1939 and it was ended in 1945. And these movement, okay, emerged after the horror of this World War II as a rebellion against basic beliefs and values in traditional culture and literature. This tradition had included the assumption that human beings are fairly rational creatures who live in an at least partially intelligible universe, that they are part of an ordered social structure, and that they may be capable of heroism and dignity even in defeat. After the 1914, however, there was a widespread tendency, especially prominent in the existential philosophy of men of letters such as Jean-Paul Sartre and Albert Camus, to view a human being as an isolated existence who is cast into an alien universe, to convince the human world as possessing no inherent truth, value, or meaning, and to represent human life in its fruitless search for purpose and significance as it moves from the nothingness whence it came toward the nothingness where it must end, as an existence which is both anguish and absurd. As Camus said in The Myth of Sisyphus, which was published in 1942, as in a universe that is suddenly deprived of illusions and of light, man feels a stranger. He is an irremediable exile. This divorce between man and his life, the actor and his setting, truly constitute the feeling of acidity. Or as Eugene Encesco, French author of The Bard Soprano, which was published in 1949, and The Lesson, which was published and performed in 1951, and other plays in the theatre of the absurd, has put it, cut off from his religious, metaphysical, and transcendental roots, man is lost. All his actions became senseless, absurd, useless. Ionesco also said, in commenting on the mixture of moods in literature of the absurd, people drowning in meaninglessness can only be grotesque, their sufferings can only appear tragic by derision. Samuel Beckett, who was the greatest playwright of this theatre of absurd, was born in 1906 and he was died in 1989. The most eminent and influential writer in this mode, both in drama and in prose fiction, was an Irishman living in Paris who often wrote in French and then translated his works into English. His plays, such as Waiting for Godot, which was performed and published in 1954, and Endgame in 1958, project the irrationalism, helplessness, and absurdity of life in dramatic forms that reject realistic settings, logical reasoning, or a coherently evolving plot. Waiting for Godot present two tramps in a West place, fruitlessly and all but hopelessly waiting for an unidentified person Godot, who may or may not exist, and with whom they sometimes think they remember that they may have an appointment. As one of them remarks, nothing happens, nobody comes, nobody goes, it's awful. Like most works in this mode, the play is absurd in the double sense that it is a grotesquely comic and also irrational and non-consequential. It is a parody not only for traditional assumptions of Western culture, but of the convention and generic form of traditional drama, and even of its own inescapable participation in the dramatic medium. The lucid but adding and pointless dialogue is often funny and pratfalls. Other modes of slapstick are used to give a comic cast to the alienation and anguish of human existence. Beckett's prose fiction, such as Malone Dies, which was published in 1958, and The Unnameable in 1960, present an anti-hero who plays out the absurd moves of the end game of civilization in a non-work which tends to undermine the coherence of its medium language itself, but typically Beckett's characters carry on even if in a life without purpose, trying to make sense of the senseless and to communicate the uncommunication. Another French playwright of the absurd was Jean Genet, who combined absurdism and diabolism. Some of the early dramatic works of Englishman Harold Pinter and the American Edward Albee are written in a similar mode. The early plays of Tom Stoppard, such as Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead, which was published in 1966 and Travelist in 1974, exploit the devices of absurd theatre more for comic than philosophical ends. There are also affinities with this movement in the numerous recent works which exploit black comedy and black humor. Balfour, Navy, or in age character in fantastic or nightmarish modern wordplay out their roles in what Ionesco called a tragic farce, in which events are often stimulously comic, horrifying, and absurd. So, guys, I hope that you understood the theater of absurd. If you don't understand, you can read out these things here from this to here. Okay, so here you can see all the things which I have just read out or I have explained you. So thank you for watching and see you in the next video.